got my laces tied. My trusty podcast by my side. If you wanna talk fun, it's the place to be. Yeah, it's the drop, D-R-O-P.
Hey, this is Taylor Bodine, lead trail reviewer with Believe in the Run. We just launched our Dirt division, and we are so honored to have Dani Moreno as our first real guest in our Dirt division podcast. This is still the drop, so don't worry, you're in the right spot. But we're going to be with a lot more trail-focused athletes, and you'll find out from Dani herself that she doesn't stick to the trails all the time, even though we'll always claim her as a trail runner. But Dani, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Really honored to be the first one on this new series. It's great.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us. And also with us is Alex Elizabeth, and she's really the one who spearheaded this effort to get a Dirt Division podcast a long time ago, which honestly I resisted because I never wanted to do this, but here we are, and I'm actually really excited. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
So, Dani, we're all runners here, and we all came from different places. And could we just get a little bit of your background on how did you find running in your life? Did it start really early on? Have you always been a runner? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I'll give you the most cliche answer ever, which is that running found me. I was definitely one of those kids that played soccer, growing up and stuff like that. And we would have kind of like these jogathons at school. And while I was very quiet for most of my young person life, that competitiveness would come out in trying to get as many laps as possible for these different fundraisers. And that's kind of when I figured out like running's cool. Like even as like a third and fourth grader, I was like, wow, I'm not only beating all the girls, but I'm beating all the boys, like in this really, like, is this even a sport sort of thing? And then, fast forward to middle school, and it was actually my PE coach who pulled my parents aside and said, hey, we think your daughter can go to college for this. And, of course, my parents were like, what? Her school can be paid for with running? That's crazy. And so starting in middle school, I, joined a couple of youth track clubs, starting with Team of Purpose based out of LA, which I was like one of two distance kids. Nearly everyone was a sprinter because most kids are in LA. And then my dad coached me for a little bit. Fast forward again to high school. Really, really started falling in love with the sport, especially because it felt more like a team sport because, cross country came into the picture, etc. Definitely struggled with like some puberty stuff, as a lot of young women, young girls do, and almost, quit the sport at that point. Something that would be a common thread throughout the rest of my life. And then, went to actually UC Santa Barbara and competed on their track and field cross country teams there. Did take a redshirt year, competed there for 5 years, and then actually quit the sport for a short bit there. And sorry, this is the Spark Notes version, but started to dive into being an outdoor guide for kayaking, paddleboarding, ocean kayaking, river kayaking, canoeing, climbing. The list goes on and on. So really got into other activities besides running. And then as a way to blow off steam, just kind of started hiking by myself in the morning, and then realized I can see a whole lot more if I started running. And then that led to a Google search of the word trail running. And I'd like to say the rest is history from there.
So, I mean, it seems like you're from more of a metropolitan area. Is that true? Like, is that where you grew up?
Yes. Yeah, definitely in the concrete jungle. Like, I grew up in Downey, California. It's technically not part of like LA County, but we would just call ourselves part of LA.
Yeah.
It was just easier for nomenclature. But yeah, I grew up in a place where like, the most greenery you got was usually in a mile by mile park or something like that, or half mile by half mile park. So yeah, not really growing up in nature. We did go to like Mammoth Lakes in the summers as I would get older here and there. But honestly, like being a club soccer player, that was mostly what my summers were taken up with.
Yeah, and I'm just like trying to identify with that idea of like as a kid of someone saying to you like, you're talented, here's kind of the track, because I didn't grow up that way. I grew up running, and I kind of had a similar experience of like, wow, I feel like I might be good at this, but I didn't have that idea of like running could be a track to college really until I hit like my senior year of high school. I was super rural. So do you think that influenced where you are today of like, could you feel that track early on, like continuing to pull, like I want to do running as a high performance, or was it more of just like, I'm good as a competitor in this? Or which one was it, like competitive or running or both?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think kind of like to your point of being in that track, like I was told from pretty much a young age by my parents that like if I wanted to go to school, like a scholarship would be my best way to that, just based on like how expensive it was. And so as a young kid, like I was involved in a lot of activities, and it was kind of planted into my head early on, like, okay, if you want to get education past high school, because honestly, a lot of kids didn't go to college where I grew up, like you have to be exceptional at something. With that being said, like I didn't realize there was kind of a wide spectrum with that, because you had kind of like smaller state schools, then you had like D3, D2, D1. But naturally, I think me kind of being always in the pursuit of excellence was like, I want to go to the best school possible. Like, how do I do that? Oh, I need to be almost the best at anything that I choose, sort of thing. And with running, it just came the most natural. Like I did piano and I did dance, and I'm like, maybe I could go to school for those, but they didn't quite call to me in the way that running did. And so, yeah, I think just applying that mindset that if I work harder than anybody else, like I can go to school was, kind of probably the beginning of that pursuit of excellence, I guess.
Do you still take that similar vein of thought of like, if I just work the hardest right now, like now you went from a middle school kid who played soccer, or a young kid who played soccer, and now an Adidas Terrex pro athlete on the global stage of like, is that your mentality still? Like, I know we'll get back to some of these other parts too, but what's your mentality around that now?
Yeah, I laugh because, well, I don't like laugh. I just kind of like chuckle myself, because that would say that's a very strong chord in the big scheme of Dani Moreno's life, is like this belief system really rooted that like, if I outwork everybody, then I will find myself on the top of podiums, winning races, etc. And I think it is like a characteristic that a lot of top athletes or just top performers in whatever field probably claim. But I think with even what you might say is like a great defining characteristic, there's also like a double-edged sword to it, is like you can outwork yourself or overwork yourself, especially when you're kind of contained to the physiology of your own body. And so, yeah, I think it is kind of interesting, because I would say I recently am coming off an injury too, is like have taken, and I do take a lot of pride in my ability to kind of like hyper focus and just work my ass off. With that being said, like because I've run for so long, my body is, I would say, relatively on the more resilient end. It can take a beating, and so it starts to express itself when I am overworked in other ways. And so, yeah, I just think there's two sides to that story.
Dani, you mentioned a break that you took from running a little bit. How long was that, and kind of what led to that, or what prompted it?
Yeah. Talking about overworking yourself, that pretty much is what happened in college. With that being said, like I probably wasn't getting, admittedly, like the best guidance. Kind of many people that were kind of like, yeah, keep working harder, keep working harder, keep working harder, to the point that I probably imploded a little bit internally and kind of just lost just like passion for the sport. I do think there probably is some aspect of it also being on a track, and you going around in circles, both like literally and figuratively, like in your own brain. And yeah, just being pushed to like really physically do a lot of big things, which now I probably wouldn't have recommended to like a young 20-year-old Dani at the time. But yeah, the break ended up being probably roughly a year, give or take. And yeah, I just stopped running in total. Like I wanted nothing to do with it. The relationship was broken at that point, and I didn't expect it to be mended at any point. Like I was already kind of on the track of how can I become like a high alpine guide on the biggest mountains in the world was kind of like the track I was going, while simultaneously I was applying to be a police officer because that was another track I was interested in. And yeah, but you know, running just kind of that nagging love that wouldn't give up, and eventually re-entered my life. And yeah, I honestly wouldn't have expected to be being called a professional for Adidas Terrex, because that definitely was not in, you know, young 20-year-old mind of Dani.
Is that when you spent some time doing lobster diving too during that break, or was that?
Yes. Yeah,
that?
I was doing a lot of spear fishing. I got into canyoneering. I bought a motorcycle. I was climbing. Yeah, it felt like a very like explorative, kind of rebellious Dani, because like to that point, like even from a young age, I was kind of put into like both on my own accord too, because my parents say like I always was like this. Like I would get hyper fixated on a goal and I would just pursue it. And so yeah, that time after college was very, very important to me for sure. Yeah, just great memories from that time. And while the chaos was fun, I did find that like I am someone who needs a little bit of contained chaos and plans and goals and things to kind of like orient my compass around. Mm-hmm. I'm not very good at like wandering, and wandering with an A. Like there's a lot of people who I'd really admired during that time who were just able to kind of just like pivot all the time. And I tried so much to be that. And while at first it was like very invigorating, it honestly was a little bit exhausting for me. Like I realized that I am someone who likes to have rails, and that's okay. You know, like it doesn't mean like I'm any less cool than the person who's wandering, but yeah, it's just how I operate, and I find the most peace and happiness in.
And I find that like coming off of that college age too, of like those times of like true exploration and like finding yourselves, like maybe that's a good time to not have any of the rails, right? But like when you talk about like getting some guidance in rails, like what or who or how did some of those come to be after that? Well, how did you get back into running for one? And then how did some of those rails come back to find you and help you and guide you?
Yeah, I think to that point, like I was someone who always had to work, like just based off of demographics, etc., socioeconomic stuff. And so like even at 15 and a half, like I was working, and then in college I worked a ton. And yeah, that kind of coupled with running and school, I kind of was like feeling this envy for people who didn't have to do that and could like kind of have fun in their summers and stuff like that. And so I think that like post-collegeness period, I finally got to do that, you know? And so that felt like very invigorating, but I felt that like guardrails just kind of like reeled me in, because I'm a yes person. I'm much better at not being a yes person, but I would say like deep in my soul, I'm like, yes, let's do that. Yes, let's do that. And so when the guardrails aren't there, like it definitely opens and exposes me more to burnout across the board, just because I'll just keep doing stuff. And so having people in my life that kind of now, you know, looking forward, remind me that it's okay to like rest and take time off, and that is as productive, if not more productive, is kind of what I'm referring to with those guardrails. With that being said, like it also in college was to a negative point where they're like, hey, I know you're aiming for this carrot, but like this carrot's bigger, so we should go after that. Mm-hmm. Instead of kind of respecting the process, it was kind of like always trying to push me to want more, which like is kind of funny because I'm already a pretty aggressively goal-oriented person. So to like tell me to want more is, I think, just asking for implosion, honestly.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny of like, from a viewer's standpoint, like I'm a big fan of the trail running sport. Like I remember when you came on the scene and just kind of built your way up in that Golden Trail series, and just seeing like how our sport has expanded so much within the time that you started, that we all started. Of like, there wasn't a track that went from college straight into professional trail running as they're starting to be now. And so like, is there a specific race or anything like that that kind of launched you into taking that competitive spirit that you once had after your hiatus, and then, wow, I'm still great at this, having fun at this new sport? Because I had that same experience of like, when I was done with track in college, I was done running. But it was like the only thing I really knew how to do at that point, or like really enjoyed thoroughly. But then thankfully I moved to a small mountain town where I also enjoyed being on trails, and there was a natural like, hey, trail running. And then I had also the privilege of like having Kilian Jornet's videos on Solomon TV and all that kind of stuff to really motivate and kind of launch me into that. Like, what was that for you of like now getting into the competitive side of trail running? How did that happen?
Yeah, I think to your point, like the trails kind of reigniting like a new chapter. Something I've tried to articulate to people is, you know, it's pretty commonplace for individuals to like be in a job for, you know, anywhere from 2 to 10 years and then to like switch careers or switch companies. And so I think potentially what a lot of us feel that like pursue running so intensely is that need for a refresh. We just like don't know what to call it sometimes. Sometimes it's road running. Sometimes it's trail running. Sometimes it's being a triathlete. And so, yeah, I think if you are one of those folks that like is in track from a very young age, like you're not realizing that sometimes that desire for something new is like really natural, honestly. And so, yeah, for me coming to the trails, as someone who loves puzzles, I was like, wow, so I can, you know, use this, you know, work base or talent, whatever you want to call it, and apply it to this thing that seems endless. Honestly, it truly is infinite. Like there's so many different types of trails. And like when you're looking at a road race profile versus like a trail race profile, like there's so many other components you have to take into consideration, and you can keep getting granular with road running. And I think if you're really passionate about it, like you can really continue to chop it up. But with trail running, it's just like so face value for me. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of lost track of the question. What was the question?
No, yeah. Like how did you end up continuing into that competitive side of trail running after your hiatus? Yeah.
To be honest, I was really broke and I found out I could win prize money, if I'm being straightforward. And I also realized I could have a good time doing it. And so it was when I won like my first big check and I was like, holy cow, this can pay for rent. Like, and I'm using a skill that I've been honing for years. Like, let's keep doing this. And to be honest, like I found kind of like dumbfounded relative success, you know, like on the national stage at first. And I wasn't training really, like I was running a couple times a week. And, you know, now I'm like, okay, obviously you were using the fitness from college, even though you took time off, like that truly was like your last couple years of college pulling over. Because then I started getting beat and I was like, oh, I got to work I need to start running more than 2 times a week if like I actually want to be good at this. And my first couple years of trail running was like pure exploration. Like I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was trying to find races on my own. And like, to your point, Taylor, like in the US, and even so, like there's such a heavy ultra bias, but I just could not wrap my head around running far because people are like, you need to run 50 miles, you need to run 100 miles. And I was like, that is really far. Like how would I like physiologically be able to do that? So I just kept doing shorter races, and for better and probably for better, because lo and behold, like money did start to kind of like trickle down into the sub ultra space. And I realized it over in Europe, like it's huge there. Like they love short distance running. And cute Golden Trail World Series, like you said, that like changed my life, to be honest, because like they would pay for athletes to, if they placed in the top 10, to like go to the following race. So again, like being so goal-oriented, I was like, all right, the goal is crystal clear. Try and get in the top 10 as many times as possible. So they keep paying for you to go to races and like pick up prize money and stuff like that. And I did leave out a small detail. I was working this whole time too. I eventually had a funny fork in the road where I got offered a job at a tech company, and I got offered the opportunity to go try out for the police department in the same week. And I was like, dang, this running thing is actually quite fun. If I become a police officer, or if I, pass all the tests and stuff like that and become a police officer, like that's going to be really hard to balance with that work schedule. What about I just give it a couple years? And then, that was a big fork in the road, because I ended up choosing a tech job, like some in the San Francisco area that, have the kombucha and stuff like that, but also had unlimited PTO. So basically all my vacations were spent going to Golden Trail World Series races for a couple of years, which was pretty fun.
You touched on some pressure to race like 50 and 100 miles. Do you still feel that pressure to kind of go beyond the sub ultra distance? Yes-ish. Because now I'm at a point where it's interesting to me. But yes, the first part of my career, I was often told or asked, I would say, or voluntold, I don't know, by a couple of my partners that like kind of just inching like, hey, so when are you going to run further? And I was just like, I don't plan on running further anytime soon. But yeah, it definitely was like a weird pressure. I didn't quite get it, to be honest, for the longest time. Now being into the sport more and like understanding more of like the early thousands, 2010s period of trail running, because I was coming in at like 2017, 2018. So kind of like the end of that 2010s era, and like seeing all the content that came out of there, talking to runners, meeting runners, etc. Like I didn't realize like it was truly like the pinnacle in the US to be, pursuing Western States, Hard Rock 100, etc. But like retroactively, I'm really happy that I just stuck to my guns, because, it's what was most fun. And I think I wasn't at a place like mentally or physically to like jump into one of those races. And it was pretty cool to like, with Golden Trail World Series coming on to the scene, like to be able to compete with the best in the world, and be on a couple podiums in those races just from me pursuing what I wanted to do the most. Yeah, that's so admirable to stay true to yourself in that area. I feel like there's so much pressure of like, okay, you've done a 50K, now sign up for the 50 and the 100 and the 200s. And people just end up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Too,
yeah, I just think it's so much more approachable too. I think people sometimes, again, I would say this is more like North American bias for sure, because it's not the case in Europe, that like people associate like when they hear trail running with, Western States 100, just like, oh, have you run a marathon? Have you run Boston? Sort of thing. And so I think it's really important for people who are interested in trail running that there are shorter distances for you to like gain your confidence. Like running downhill is scary if you've never run down on a trail, or like learning to hike and find like what pace is too much, what pace is too little, like how much water you need is like such a huge safety concern, like especially out on the trails. And there are shorter distances for people to try that I hope people, continue to jump in and stuff like that. You don't have to run a 100-miler to call yourself a trail runner. That's for sure.
It's a much broader spectrum these days too, and even in the U.S. now, of like there's a lot of races that are popping up that with appropriate prize money, with like I was just at Lake Sonoma, right? You were too, right?
Cool.
Yeah, and so So like there's a lot of things popping up for those who might be interested in trail. Again, like a lot of our listeners are going to be coming from the roadside. And you said a word that's popular around these parts, marathon. A couple years ago, you kind of took that endeavor on. Is that right?
Yeah, I ran my debut in Boston Marathon, so that's kind of funny. I feel extremely lucky and grateful that was the case. I don't know how I got into that field, but yeah, many thanks to the elite director over there for letting a little trail runner in there.
Go Adidas.
Yes. But yeah, it was super, super cool. I would say for my first marathon, it was pretty I don't know if anything will be able to surmount to that. It's quite a special experience. With that being said, I got the full experience, headwind and rain the entire time. So as someone who was trying to pursue the OTQ, I was like, wow, I really have my work set out for me. I did come up a bit short. I do look back and I'm like, oh, there's a couple things I could have tweaked here and there. But yeah, when you're running headwind into rain, it's just you just got to roll the dice and see what happens on the day. But yeah, I would definitely love to go back. That is an incredible race.
And is the OTQ at all on your mind for this next go around?
Oh yeah, definitely. I ran a half marathon before that marathon, and I ran 112, I think, high. And then this last year I ran that same half and I ran 110 high. So I think the speed is there. If I want to try and do that, I mean, I guess I could also try and qualify in the half, but yeah, I definitely I think it is, while I am a professional trail runner, at the essence, I will always be a runner and be that little kid, chasing laps and running around the track in college. And yeah, I think the roads are just so fun. It truly is just it's different mentally than the trails. I will say that. And just the speed and the strength, I really think you have to be strong for the roads. And I think it translates extremely well to trails. And it's just fun, honestly, to mix it up. So yeah, I actually was talking to a friend a couple days ago. I was like, how many weeks did you have before your marathon build? Because she's a pretty prominent trail runner and she crushed it. MK Sullivan, she ran Chicago and won the mass start. And I was like, okay, I wonder if I could jump in Chicago this year. I just need to figure it out. Because coming off an injury, I do want to, what's it called? I need to trail race. Obviously, I'm a trail run. So just trying to figure out where a road marathon would fit in.
Yeah. That is kind of the beautiful thing too of where you're at as a professional running for Adidas Terrex, of you have also the whole resources of Adidas at your fingertips too. And we're gear heavy on this side of things. That's our bread and butter, our backbone. So what kind of gear are you pulling for? I've noticed recently you've been doing track workouts, road workouts, you've been getting on the trail, some of all of it. How does what type of gear are you pulling for often? And can you just elaborate a little bit more on how you feel that one feeds the other in terms of the activity? Because there's a lot of people who are kind of afraid to go back and forth between each. And personally, I don't typically want to anymore, but many people are curious about that. So you're a coach, you're an athlete. What's the gear you're kind of taking for often, and kind of that relationship between trail running and road running and even track?
Yeah, I'll dive into the relationship first. So when I first started running again, I did jump on the track. And well, I guess I lie. I was doing stadiums because I was only running 2 times a week and I didn't know how to train for trails. So I'd run trails and do stadiums. I eventually got a coach and he immediately threw me on the track. And this is all per my individual. So no one compare yourself to my journey in the sense of, he said, all right, let's try and break 3 minutes in the 800. And I kind of laughed, being an arrogant 20-something-year-old. I'm like, break 3 minutes. And I used to do that 10 times in college and I could not break 3 minutes. And it was such a eye-opening experience for me. I was like, wow, I was able to do that for 5 years of my life. And now I can't even do it once. And so,
yeah, it kind of just like expressed, and that's all to say. I started doing track workouts once a week as I was training for trails, and I could see the immediate crossover first to my downhill, because when you're running downhill, like you need to have ideally like a pretty efficient stride, especially if you're like trying to run fast. And while gravity is very nice helping you on downhills, like there is the physiological limitation at times that if you're trying to run downhills for 6 miles at like the professional female level right now, like you should be able to run on non-technical terrain, like sub 6, like low 6s, and on technical terrain between like 7 and 9 minutes, I would say, like if you want to be competitive. And if you haven't run like, 6-minute pace for 6 miles at the end of a 5-hour race, it's incredibly difficult. So yeah, just like incorporating that speed into my training, like from the get-go, not only did it like boost my confidence because I knew exactly, about how fast I could run, but the downhill efficiency definitely seemed to help. And then later on in my career, road workouts with the combination of track workouts, I saw a correlation to my uphill, just like form and efficiency as well. Just kind of like getting that really good push off, knowing how to use your arms. I'm sure everyone has experienced T-Rex arms. But like if you're used to like bringing your elbow all the way back, like the knees will follow, especially on the uphills. So yeah, it's just like it all fits together. I will say though, there are trail runners that like don't do speed and they are just fine. So it definitely is like figuring out like what puzzle pieces work best for you. And, talking to other runners who have come from like a track road background, they tend to find more positives by including that in their training than runners who come from like just a straight mountain background that have never done it. Like they'll see gains. It's really interesting. It's like, I think the body and the mind, like when it knows what it's working with, depending on your background, is really helpful. From a gear standpoint, yes, like Adidas has everything. The Adios Pro 3, I think at this point, oh my gosh, that shoe is so nice. Oh my goodness. Having run in a lot of carbon shoes, like that is something special. And for my road days, I run in the Adidas Star. It's just like super cush, super comfy. Just like nice for recovery runs because I don't always run on the trails on recovery runs. And then on the trails, we have kind of like 3 shoes in our quiver. We have what I would say is like our workhorse everyday shoe, probably even like technical terrain, is the Agravic 3. I absolutely love that shoe. I just think even if there's a small chance I might even race in CCC in it, just because I think it's a really safe, comfortable shoe. Then we have the Speed, the Agravic Speed, which is kind of like a lower profile, very lightweight shoe. I would say if you're doing like shorter, faster races, that's a great one. And then last and definitely not least, there's the Agravic Speed Ultra, probably our most popular shoe right now. It like was the longest coming of that shoe. Like athletes were wearing it and people were like, when are we going to get this shoe? But it's basically a like super shoe on the trails. And it is, for me, coming from like my previous sponsor and the type of like drop that they had switching to the ASU, it was like an adjustment period for sure. But it's one of those like, once you figure it out, like you cannot like leave it at home. Like it's so easy to just throw it on. It just feels so nice, has a lot of bounce. And yeah, the downhill just takes some time. So if someone is trying out that shoe, like definitely just be kind to yourself and like just inch your way into it. But once you figure it out, it's like, it's game changing.
Yeah, it's quite an aggressive shoe on that 4-foot rocker. And it's just such a groundbreaking shoe in general for trail running because it has some technologies and geometries that no other shoe has. So I like that you said that just takes some time to get used to because it definitely does. But yeah, special to say the least. Did you run in that? You recently ran a 50K and did very well. Is that what shoe did you run in for that?
Yeah, I ran a 20 miler. Maybe that's what you're referring to.
Okay. Yeah.
That was my first race back in like 9 months. But yeah, I just ran in that one, which was great. And just kind of getting used to the shoe again. Again, it's not a very natural shoe for me personally. But yeah, just getting used to it because I know how nice it is to race in it. I mean, all of my best, I will say in quotes, like index scores on UTMB, because there is some controversy on those, have all been run in that shoe. Yeah.
Okay. Efficient, fast, fun.
Yes, especially if you're running on the West Coast. Like, if you were to splurge on shoes, like definitely get those ones.
Well, I ended up wearing that for Lake Sonoma on a very short build, let's say. But man, I had never been to Lake Sonoma. I had never really been on a lot of buffed out California single track. And man, that was like the choice. It was so good. Could we talk about Lake Sonoma? I know you were supposed to compete there and you didn't end up. But then I saw you at different events. You were at the finish line forever cheering on your teammates. And like as a dad, I'm always looking for people and athletes who would inspire my girls. And so you're one of the athletes that like when you do really well, like we're a trail running family, like I'll show my family and my girls like here's some results. And it's just fun to see your character just out there in the open, in public, per se, you know, of like where that's part of it, of like your character is very obvious in who you are. And you have a lot of teammates who you're rooting for and they root for you, and you're part of this ecosystem where there's a lot of athletes and people like you in Adidas Terrex. It's really special. It's something that, especially as the trail running world grows and creating professional teams, that we've seen like Adidas Terrex is really like the model right now. And what do you attribute to that? And I think I have a few ideas of what I would attribute to it as a former coach and an athlete myself. What would you attribute to that? And is that a correct perception, I guess?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you. That was really kind. I really appreciate that. Honestly, I think it's just how I grew up. Like the community that I grew up in, it was everyone's watching each other's kids, and like everyone's parents worked, and a lot of parents worked really long hours, and like how I got to soccer practice changed every day, but I still got there. Like whether it was so-and-so's parents or so-and-so's abuelita, or like, you know, like it was just such a community effort that we are better and stronger together. And I think those same kind of like pillars were translated from the adults to all of the kids, and how we approached soccer practice or track practice. Like even in high school, like there'd be 12 moms there who, you know, had just worked full-time jobs, but were there to run with the girls so we wouldn't run by ourselves, you know, like in a community that, you know, while mostly safe, could be unsafe at some times, just to make sure we were okay. And so I think just like as a very observant child, I took that really to heart. I'm like, wow, this is cool. Like my mom's here, like running with us after she worked like a 12-hour shift. Like that's crazy. And definitely something like as I've become an adult, like appreciate more and more and more. So yeah, that essence of community there, and then having my own experiences that I've been on a lot of teams, and they all have a special place in my heart. But my favorite teams were the ones where we like loved each other beyond sport, and were just like best friends and shared personal stories with each other, and just were like very vulnerable with each other. And so, yeah, I think that's all to say, like human connection to me is like number one. And like, I want to always look back on all my experiences and see like, yeah, that was really cool. We were pursuing that, but like, how much cooler was it that we were like pursuing it together and not just like individually, etc. Like we all have our own goals, but it feels so much more holistic and rewarding that like, no matter who comes out on top, like you're in a good mood, you know? So yeah, I would say that's the biggest part of it. And yeah, I don't know if there's much else to say there. I think that's it.
Can you talk a little bit about the In Her Tracks initiative and kind of like what kind of prompted it, what the vision is, and where you plan to go with it?
Yeah, I mean, such a cool freaking project from Adidas Terrex. So if you haven't checked it out already, or if you don't follow Adidas Terrex on Instagram, they posted this, I think it was 4 or 5 videos. One was of me and then 3 women that I coached for Lake Sonoma, 2 of them for the half marathon, 1 of them for the marathon. And this year, the half marathon was a women's only race, which was really, really freaking cool. Mm-hmm. And essentially they asked me if I would be open to coaching, some runners from Adidas Runners LA a lot, in addition to these women that they were going to select based, I think they got like 300 applications in like 2 days, which is just so cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was the easiest, fastest yes for me ever. I'd been telling them not been telling them, but kind of like inserting myself a couple years. I'm like, hey, I'm from the LA area. Like, if you ever want to do something with LA that involves an athlete, like, please think of me. Like, because I have done some stuff back with my high school, whether it's like talks or runs or camps, because I just think it's so important for that part of the communities, just like based on demographics, to know that like, hey, running is really cool and empowering. And, there's ways to do it. You can go to college for it, etc. And I just love that aspect of giving back, because women did that for me when I was younger. And, they still are forever like mentors, friends, etc. And you just have to know that it's possible sometimes, Side tangent over back to Lake Sonoma. So yeah, it was an easy yes. So they picked the athletes and I one-on-one coached 3 of them and provided kind of like a framework for Adidas Runners LA. And then once we were there, I did just kind of like a couple hour trail clinic for all of them, being like, hey, this is how I would suggest running uphill and downhill and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just, I love watching people fall in love with trail running or just like running in general. I think everyone kind of feels that, like when you're super passionate about something and your friend suddenly takes a liking to it too, you're like, yay, now we get to do it together. I think it very much was that feeling of like, hey, we can talk about races and stuff like that. Like, obviously we could talk about everything else, but like that shared passion is like a love language to me. So it was a really special project to be a part of.
Do you plan to keep it going? Are you going to do it kind of in advance of more races, or?
I hope so, Alex. Like, that would be so cool. I think Terrex like was really, really happy with how everything turned out. It was their first time doing that. They have had like athletes coach runners for different races before. I think one was like the Innsbruck Trail Festival, but never like a female centric one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm honestly just, whenever they want to ask me to do it again, like I'm hoping we do.
Right. I love that. I love that. It's like, you're worthy of a coach. You belong here. Having the support to show up to those start lines is totally such a barrier. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I love that about just trail running in general. Like, that's something that kind of hooked me as well, of like the community aspect, obviously, for any of our running endeavors. And I'm not like a big people person, but that's always what it comes back to. It seems like people investing in me, and then like, it's just amazing that your sponsor, Adidas Terrex, has laid out the floor to be able to invest in so many other people, because it's worth it, right? It's worth it for people. And that's such a cool program. Thanks for being a model in that way.
Thank you.
40 minutes in, Taylor says he's not a people person.
Okay, thank you. I feel like we have so many questions we could ask. But as we're looking into 2025, like, you're feeling healthy right now. You're looking forward to some big adventures, big races. What's next on your docket? Caught you right in the middle.
Yeah, 2025 is a special one for sure. Like you said, I was supposed to race at Lake Sonoma, and then unfortunately rolled the ankle that I had injured. And so didn't start there. Instead jumped into a local race here, Bishop, just 30 minutes south of me, a couple weeks ago. But this weekend you're
in Mammoth Lakes, is that right?
Yes, I'm in Mammoth Lakes.
Cool.
And this weekend, I'm actually headed out to Vail, Colorado, to compete in the GoPro Mountain Games. There's some short trail races, and I'm one to kind of like rarely repeat races, actually. I like to just do new races every year. But this is one of the few exceptions. And I just think it's just such an incredible event. It's like a week long. It's called the Mountain Games because there's mountain biking, fishing, kayaking, dog games, like you name it, it's probably there. There's music and tons of samples. I love the samples. They're super awesome. So yeah, I'm heading out there this weekend. I am going to like train through it because I also, in 2 weeks, will be lining up at Broken Arrow 46K. And for those who don't know about Broken Arrow, it's this 3-day trail running event up in Palisades, Tahoe. It's been going on for a really long time. One of the first big checks that I ever earned in my career was at Broken Arrow in 2018, I want to say. But this year it is like in the trail running world. Oh my gosh, it's like super, super, super hyped. Now it's kind of known as like a great doubleheader with Broken Arrow happening and then the weekend after Western States 100. But in Broken Arrow, they have the Ascent, which is selecting the USA team for the vertical, which will be competing in the World Champs in Spain end of September. So the top 3 men and women, Americans, because it's an international field, will make that team. Then on the second day is the 46K. Same thing. It's a Team USA selection race. So top 3 men, top 3 women will be selected for the USA team for short trail. For those who are saying, why is it called short trail? Yeah, it is not that short. It is a 5-hour race. And then on the last day is the 23K, which is part of what I would kind of liken to the Diamond League in track and field. The Golden Trail World Series has a stop because their races change most of the year or every year. And so that race is part of that. So it's a pretty banging weekend. But yeah, lining up for that race, definitely mixed feelings. Like I just started running again in February. And so it feels like a relatively short runway for how, in previous years I would be kind of lining up for this race. And, I'm setting my, I have a personal goal of being undefeated on the U.S. soil for this distance race. I haven't been beaten yet. And that was something I really have been working on a sports psych with, just to kind of set aside and being kind to myself because I'm coming off of injury and really, really just leaning in with curiosity. Like if I'm at the front of the pack, cool. If I'm not in the front of the pack, cool. And just kind of really racing with what I got on the day.
In the past, you've done the 23K there, right?
Yes, I did it last year.
Okay. Is this your first time doing the 46K distance?
It is, yeah,
okay.
It is. So yeah, two laps, which actually is exciting to me. Kind of a unique format. People are like, "Oh, that's so lame." It's like, well, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
it's a mental aspect to it.
And holy cow, that's just the 23K route. That's a punchy course, and to be able to bring it back and do it again, what would be your strengths on a course like that, would you say? Because it has some of everything.
Probably descents and anything that's below 15%. With that being said, with my new coach, we have been working a lot on doing the best with the time that I have. And so just getting really strong on the climbing, honestly, because I am signed up for CCC, which is kind of like our unbespoken world championship end of August, even though we do have our world championship. We'll call it our Super Bowl or our Tour de France. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting, Taylor, because my injury came from me absolutely sending it on a downhill last August. Something that I take a lot of pride in is I tend to be very good on the last descents of races. And I attribute that to my alter ego that just sends it usually. And
does your alter ego have a name?
D-Money, of course. But when D-Money comes out, there is no fear to be had. And yeah, I absolutely threw myself down a mountain and in the process got the worst injury that I've had in my running career.
And so, yeah, immediately my downhills have been something I've been working on with the sports psych too. And just acknowledging, honestly, trail running, when you're competing, when you're running as fast as like the front end is, like, I would consider it very much an extreme sport. It's an extreme sport for everybody, but I don't want to like scare people. Like, you can inch yourself into it. But when you're trying, I'm pretty sure when I broke my cuboid, I was running like sub 5 minute pace, like down this hill. So it's special circumstances, but yeah, that's all to say. I'm very excited for Broken Arrow. I think it suits me.
I think, whether you're a viewer or racing, the 46K, man, that one would be just a hard one for me to be like, I'm really excited to do this, even though I love that distance. I love the mountains, but man, 2 laps of that is competitively.
It's hard.
So hard.
And it's like 9,000 feet. So it's not, you're moving and grooving up some climbs.
That's amazing. Well, I just want to respect your time and just say thank you again for just your character, who you are in our trail running space, and just being with us on the Drop podcast today. I'm sure we have many conversations in the future, because we'll be out at Broken Arrow, Western States. We'll be at UTMB. So we'll run into each other and have some of those conversations too. But thank you, Dani.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. Again, just honored to be the first one. And hopefully we get to chat again in the future.
Absolutely.
Great to meet you. Thanks.
Give a good stretch, got my laces tied. My trusty podcast by my side. If you wanna tuck run, it's the place to be. Yeah, it's the Drop, DROP.